One of my favorite things about Maximus P is this object called the Multislider. Basically, the Multislider allows you to create this object that outputs a bunch of data points, and you can use this to control stuff. So we can see all this data coming out. We can also use it as a way for monitoring data. So this is a great way for making something like a step sequencer, even storing information about images that you want to manipulate or preset information. This is something I have found to be missing from TouchDesigner, so recently I decided to recreate this, and here's a little demo of some of the things it can do. There's also a caveat that after I recreated this, I found something very similar in TouchDesigner that kind of did what I wanted, but better than I had made. So I'm going to show you some of the additional things I did to sort of make my little plugin stand out. So here we have my little Multislider. We can control a bunch of data here. In this instance, we're going to do an audio waveform, so it's just going to be an oscillator. With this thing coming into the null here, I'm basically going to control it, and this is like wave shaping. So I'm going to distort that wave by this additional waveform, and then this controls a filter. We can see it's fairly smooth to use. I can look at the parameters here. I can basically change the resolution of how many sliders I have. So right now I have 8 sliders horizontally. Go up to say 100. There you go. Go back to 8 though, for granularity's sake. And we also have this resolution here, which is basically how many points are we going to include going up. So right now the vertical is divided into essentially 16 chunks, but you could divide it into something a lot more granular. We also have this scale range, which basically highlights where the bottom and top value are going to be. Right now we're just 0 to 1, and similar for some of these. So let's see what we've got here. This one, 80 to 180 for that scale range, and 1 to 4.5. So you can scale this in a way that sort of makes sense for what you're controlling. And it doesn't just have to be an oscillator going through, it can be any signal. So it could be a sample like this. In this sample I'm also controlling the pitch. And this is it without the wave shaping. So you can create some funky accumulations of sound using this technique. Other things I've done is I can pack these together and control multiple parameters. So in this I'm controlling the horizontal and vertical of a displace, as well as how much of the actual image is coming through. So you can use this to create some interesting sort of control UIs. Obviously in this case I've added in some pretty colors. Now, this is all fairly cool, but what we can see is that I completely overlooked this multi-level slider from TouchDesigner. So this can be found in the tools palette under the multi things. Let's find M. So we've got multi-level. And so what multi-level lets us do is essentially exactly what I just showed you. We can also save our parameters here. The version I created, you start from scratch every time you reload a project, although you can obviously lock in your data if you take it as an image and then lock that image. This multi-level lets you create lots and lots of sliders, and you can also move around that range. So this is something that is worth using if you want to use that mechanic that I was just showing you. But the multi-level slider has some limitations. The main reason I wanted to initially create a multi-level sample or multi-level slider is so I could actually send OSC messages to control something like Ableton Live. So let's see where Live is. Let's bring up that Live patch. And right now we're seeing my voice coming in because I'm using this just to loop everything together very basically. But I have this little patch here, which is a Max for Live patch that I made, and it's taking the data coming from these sliders. So let's see how that sounds. So we can see how the sliders are moving when I control here. This is controlling our pitch, and this is controlling our volume. On the device itself, we have this option for triggering. So we can have something triggering every note, or we can set up this as a gate. This could be something that could be added in as something that's OSC controlled. But this kind of means that you get these funky loops kind of coming in and out as you move through. Obviously, this could also be used to send various control voltages to control sort of effects in Ableton as well. So this is a very quick demo of this tool, and it's going to be available on my Patreon if you want to use it. The important factor here is basically the channels you're sending your OSC information from. So we can see here that I'm sending from 7,000 for my pitch, and I'm sending from, let's go inside, 7,001 for my volume. So this is being picked up inside that Max for Live patch. If you create more instances of this Max for Live patch, you have to just switch the address you're sending on. And I'm going to add in a element here where you can basically just change that address here, and accessibly in the Max for Live patch as well. This is going to be available on my Patreon, so download this and have a play. I'd love to see the projects you make with this.